On Christmas morning, 1964, before most of Warminster had properly woken, something passed over the town. At first no one saw it. They heard it. A violent sound above the rooftops, a clatter like tiles being dragged loose. A humming in the dark. Something moving overhead with enough force to wake people from sleep and send others looking up into an empty sky. And then the sounds became sightings, the sightings became vigils. People climbed the hills at night with cameras, notebooks and flasks of tea, watching the sky over Wiltshire for lights that moved strangely. At Cradle Hill they waited. At Clay Hill, where older stories already spoke of devils, spirits, and strange forces in the land, the new mystery settled over ancient ground. For a few years, this quiet Wiltshire town became one of Britain's strangest destinations, a place where UFO hunters, skeptics, locals and believers all came to ask the same question. What was moving over Warminster?
Adventures don't always go as planned. One minute you're cruising in your RV, the next your tire hits a massive pothole. Progressive is ready for you when the unexpected hits, with excellent claim service for your boat, RV, and motorcycle. Plus optional coverage like roadside assistance and on-the-water towing. Visit Progressive.com and make sure your next adventure is unforgettable, for the right reasons. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Coverage is subject to policy terms and limits.
While every other channel is fighting for your customers' attention, podcasts are where they've already given it. No one accidentally listens to a podcast for 45 minutes. They choose to be here. They trust the voice in their ears, and when that voice talks about your brand, it doesn't sound like advertising. It sounds like a recommendation from a friend. Acast gives you that trust at scale. Digital precision, host-read authenticity, and performance data that proves it worked. Don't fight for attention. Buy it with Acast. Learn more by visiting acast.com/advertise.
Ever notice how life's best stories don't happen in your living room? They happen on the open road, out on the water, or parked under the stars. At Progressive, they get that you want to focus on the experience, not worry about the what-ifs. That's why they offer quality insurance designed for your ride, whether that's a boat, RV, or motorcycle. Adventure with confidence. Visit Progressive.com and see how easy it is to protect your favorite way to get away. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in D.C. Prices vary based on how you buy.
Do you keep hearing podcast ads, like this one, for example, but always wonder how you actually get involved with them for your own brand or organization? Well, it's easier than you think. We're Acast, and we give you the platform to do it all yourself. Browse thousands of popular podcasts, choose the shows that match your perfect audience, set your budget, and launch. And if you want a hand, our podcast specialists are there to help you launch with confidence. This is podcast advertising without barriers. Get started at acast.com/advertise.
Hello, I'm Sarah and welcome to the Whispering Woods podcast. I'm on my own today, as mentioned yesterday, if you didn't catch it. Toby is in Greece, actually, with his dad and his sister and his niece. So I bet they're hot. I'm here in Old Blighty and it's pretty cool at the moment and I'm enjoying that compared up to last week because that was awful. Today's episode is all about Warminster, the Warminster thing, and some other stuff going on in the region. So this is a UFO-y type episode. But first of all, we have a new patron. Annette, thank you so much for supporting the podcast. We really, really appreciate it. We really, really do. If you'd like to support the podcast, you can do so by visiting patreon.com/The Whispering Woods, where we have a number of tiers. You can listen in advance and ad-free. We're also on Apple Premium, where for $4.99 a month, you can listen to all episodes ad-free. Come and join us on social media. We do have a Facebook group. I'm also doing some Instagram reels and TikTok-y things and all of that jazz. So you can come and say hi on social media. Right, I'll get straight into this. Are you ready for the story? On Christmas morning, 1964, the town of Warminster was still dark. Across the roofs and lanes of the Wiltshire market town, most people were asleep, waiting for the ordinary sounds of Christmas Day to begin. Children waking early, fires being lit, kettles boiling, church bells, footsteps on stairs, doors opening into the cold morning air. But before dawn, something else moved over Warminster. It was not seen at first. It was heard. In one house, a woman woke to a violent noise above her ceiling, as though something were lashing at the roof tiles. It sounded like branches being dragged across the house, then like giant hailstones striking from above, growing louder until the ceiling seemed to come alive. Elsewhere in the town, others heard the same kind of disturbance. A terrific clatter, a humming in the air, the sound of roof tiles being rattled and pulled by some unseen force. One woman, walking through the darkness to Holy Communion, heard what she first thought was a gritting lorry coming along the road. But as the noise came nearer, it seemed to lift above her. It was not on the road. It was overhead, moving through a clear sky where nothing could be seen. 4 miles away at Nook Camp, soldiers were woken by a sound like a chimney stack being torn from a roof and hurled across the camp. No damage was found. No clear source was identified. And by daylight, Warminster had entered the first hours of a mystery that would follow the town for years. Before the lights appeared over Cradle Hill, before the sky watchers arrived, before the photographs, the vigils, the arguments, the books and the strange pilgrimages into the Wiltshire night, there was only the sound. The sound above the rooftops, a sound that seemed to pass over the town like something searching. And no one could say what had made it. By itself, one strange sound in the night might have faded quickly. A storm passing over the rooftops, maybe a lorry in the distance, or a dream half carried into waking. But in Warminster, the Christmas morning disturbance did not belong to one house alone. As the day unfolded, more accounts began to surface. People compared what they had heard. The stories were not identical, but they seemed to belong to the same family of sound. Something above the roofs. Something moving through the air. Something loud enough to wake sleepers, disturb soldiers, and make ordinary residents look upwards into the dark. At Nook Camp, the men who had been woken found no obvious damage. There wasn't a chimney stack torn loose, no shattered structure, no explanation for the violence of the noise they believed had passed over them. In another part of town, Roger Rump and his wife had been stirred by what sounded like roof tiles being dragged from the house. Mrs. Rump was said to have been frightened badly enough that the incident stayed with her, not as a passing oddity, but as something disturbing and inexplicable. Then there was the woman walking to church. She was on her way through the early morning darkness for Holy Communion, when she heard what she first thought was a heavy vehicle approaching along the road. At that hour, on Christmas morning, even that would have been unusual. But as the sound came nearer, it seemed to lift away from the road and move overhead. When she looked, the sky was clear. Nothing was there. No aircraft, no visible source. Only the noise travelling above her. These early Warminster reports were not yet the most famous UFO sightings that would later draw visitors to the hills. They were stranger in another way because they arrived without a shape. No saucer could be pointed to. No light could be followed across the sky. No witness could describe a craft, a colour, a window, or a beam. At first, the Warminster thing was invisible. It announced itself through pressure, vibration, and sound. The person who began to gather those stories was Arthur Shuttlewood. Shuttlewood was a local journalist for the Warminster Journal, a former soldier, and by many accounts a man who became deeply bound to the mystery he was recording. At the beginning, he was not simply writing a piece of local colour. He was speaking to frightened residents, noting what they said, and trying to give shape to something that had entered the town without warning. As more reports came in, the story began to grow beyond Christmas morning. In the weeks and months that followed, there were further claims of strange sounds, violent humming, dead birds, disturbances in the air, and unusual objects seen over Warminster and the countryside around it. Some witnesses described lights, others saw shapes, and slowly the mystery changed. The sound over the rooftops became the thing in the sky. By the summer of 1965, Warminster was no longer only a town where people had heard something frightening on Christmas morning. It was becoming a place where people went out at night to look upwards. The surrounding land helped the story take hold. Warminster sits on the edge of Salisbury Plain, a landscape already heavy with military presence, ancient earthworks, chalk hills, burial mounds, lonely roads and wide skies. To one side lay army land, to another high ground where watchers could gather after dark. And then came Cradle Hill. The hill became one of the main viewing places for those who believed something unexplained was moving over Warminster. People went there in darkness, wrapped against the cold, scanning the horizon for lights. Some were dedicated ufologists, some were locals. Others were drawn there by curiosity, by the growing reputation of the town. What had begun as a noise in the early hours of Christmas morning was now becoming a pilgrimage. People came because they wanted to see the thing for themselves, and some of them believed they did. By the summer of 1965, the Warminster mystery had begun to change shape. The first stories had come as sound. Now the witnesses were looking for something they could see. Lights were reported over the town and surrounding countryside. Some were described as orange. Some seemed to move and hover in ways that did not fit ordinary aircraft. Others were said to appear over the open land near Warminster, where Salisbury Plain stretched out under a wide and watchful sky. There were strange explosions too. In August 1965, residents on the Boreham Field housing estate reportedly heard a loud blast, followed by jolts and further sounds that seemed to shake the area. An orange flame or glowing object was described in the sky, shaped by one account like an electric light bulb. Windows in 2 houses were said to have been broken. Once again, the military presence nearby made the story harder to settle. Warminster was not an isolated village cut off from the modern world. It was a town beside army land, where exercises, aircraft, flares and explosions might all have ordinary explanations. But that didn't make the reports disappear. If anything, the nearness of Salisbury Plain gave the mystery another layer. People could ask whether the thing was something from the sky, or something from the military land, or something that belonged to neither. Then came the photograph. On 29th of August 1965, a young local factory worker named Gordon Faulkner was reportedly taking his camera to his mother's house when he saw something unusual in the sky. He managed to take a picture of it, a small, dark, saucer-like shape above Warminster. The image was grainy, but it arrived at exactly the right moment. Faulkner passed the photograph to Arthur Shuttlewood, and Shuttlewood sent it on to the national press. In September 1965, the Daily Mirror published the picture, and Warminster was no longer only a local mystery. The town became a destination, and the name Arthur Shuttlewood became almost impossible to separate from the story. He wrote about the reports, gathered witnesses, argued for the reality of the phenomenon, and stood at the centre of a growing circle of believers. Some thought he had documented something extraordinary. Some thought he had helped create the legend he was chasing. But either way, Warminster had changed. By then, people were no longer only asking what had passed over the rooftops on Christmas morning. They were driving into Wiltshire, climbing the hills, and waiting for it to come back. Cradle Hill became the place people went when they wanted to meet the mystery on its own ground. It stood on the edge of Warminster's strange new map, one of the high places where the town fell away beneath the sky and the dark countryside opened out around it. By day it was only a hill, fields, tracks, hedges, a wide view over Wiltshire. But after dusk, it became something else. People climbed it carrying coats, torches, cameras, notebooks and flasks of tea, and the private hope that this would be the night when the thing returned. Some came once, curious and half embarrassed to be there. Others came again and again. They watched the horizon, they watched the stars, they watched for lights that moved too quickly, hovered too long, changed colour, vanished without warning, or seemed to answer thought with movement. On some nights, nothing happened, only the cold, the wind, the sounds of the countryside settling around them. On other nights, witnesses claimed to see objects crossing the sky above Warminster, sometimes bright, sometimes silent, sometimes behaving in ways they could not easily fit into the ordinary language of aircraft. Arthur Shuttlewood was often at the centre of this world. He was no longer simply the local journalist who'd gathered reports of strange sounds over the town. He became one of the keepers of the Warminster mystery. He wrote books, recorded sightings, joined the watchers, and spoke with the certainty of a man who believed the events around town were not only real, but important. To some, that made him a guide. To others, it made him too close to the story. But whatever people thought of Shuttlewood, the effect was undeniable. Warminster had become known far beyond Wiltshire. The town was now spoken of in UFO circles across Britain. Visitors arrived hoping to see what others had seen. The Warminster thing had turned the countryside into a kind of open-air observatory, not built for science, but for belief. Cradle Hill was not the only place associated with the sightings, but it became one of the most famous. It had the right atmosphere for a legend to gather there: a hilltop, darkness, a town below, military land not far away, ancient Wiltshire around it, and above, the enormous sky. By the early 1970s, the Warminster mystery had entered a new phase. The first sounds had passed over the town years earlier, the first sightings had drawn national attention. Cradle Hill had become a gathering place for watchers, and Arthur Shuttleworth had written the story into books. But the mystery did not only live in the sky. In a clipping I came across from 1971, one of the strangest later accounts centres on a man named George Woods from Whiston. For years, Woods had kept a careful log of UFO sightings. Some had been over Merseyside, but many more were connected to Warminster, where he had returned again and again to watch the skies around Cradle Hill. On one visit, he spent most of the day there and saw nothing. But when he returned the next day, the story changed. In a cornfield near Cradle Hill, he found a large triangular area where the crop had been flattened. The clipping described it as a dark triangular shape, roughly 30 feet by 50 feet, pressed into the field as though something heavy had come down there. To Woods it looked like a landing mark. Whether it was caused by an object, whether animals or human hands, the image stayed with the wider legend. It belonged to the same strange landscape as the watchers on the hill, the lights over the plain, and the unseen thing that had first moved over Warminster on Christmas morning. As Warminster's reputation grew, Arthur Shuttleworth moved further into the heart of the mystery. He was no longer only the man recording what others had seen. He became a witness himself. One of his most unusual accounts was said to have taken place in September 1965, when he saw a large cigar-shaped object in the sky from his own home. According to later retellings, he tried to film it, but his camera began to behave strangely in his hands. He felt sharp, prickling sensations down one side of his body, and when the film was developed, the result was damaged and unusable. For Shuttleworth, this was not simply bad luck. He came to believe that whatever controlled the object knew he was trying to record it and had interfered with the camera. From there, the Warminster story moved into even stranger territory. In his books, Shuttleworth wrote of alleged telephone calls from beings who claimed to come from another world. One account placed the calls at a phone box near Boreham Field, close to the area where some of the earlier explosive sounds and disturbances had been reported. By then, Warminster had become far more than a town with unexplained lights in the sky. It was a place where the boundaries of the story kept expanding. The strange thing about Warminster is that the UFO story did not land on empty ground. The countryside around the town was already old. To the west stands Clay Hill, rising sharply from the Wiltshire landscape, visible for miles around. Today it's often linked with UFO sightings, skywatching and the Warminster thing. But long before the 20th century, the hill already had its own place in local folklore. One story says, the devil made it. According to the old tale, the devil was angry with the people of Devizes and set off to bury the town beneath a great sack of earth. As he travelled across the countryside, he met an old man and asked how far it was to Devizes. The old man, either clever or lucky, told him the town was still a long way off and showed him his worn-out shoes as proof of the long journey. The devil, believing he still had miles to go, gave up. He dropped the earth where he stood. And there, the story says, Clay Hill was formed. It's a familiar kind of English landscape legend, a strange hill, explained not by geology, but by mischief, wit and the devil losing patience on the road. But at Clay Hill, the older story sits beside later ones. The hill has also been associated with fairies, elementals, ghosts, lights, and watchers gathering under the night sky. During the height of the Warminster mystery, Clay Hill became part of the same haunted geography as Cradle Hill. People looked there too. Its height made it a natural viewing place, with open sky above and the Wiltshire countryside spread out beneath it. For anyone hoping to see something strange, it had all the right qualities. Ancient ground, wide horizons, lonely paths, and enough folklore already clinging to it that a light in the sky could feel like part of a much older pattern. This is where the Warminster thing begins to feel less like an isolated UFO flap, and more like a continuation of the older stories. In another century, strange lights on a hill might have been called fairy fire. A disturbing presence on the road might have been blamed on the devil. Voices, shapes, and movements in the fields might have entered the language of spirits, ghosts, or earthbound forces. By the 1960s, people had another word: UFO. The strange reports did not end at Warminster. They moved through the wider Wiltshire landscape, attaching themselves to hills, fields, old roads, and chalk figures cut into the land. One of the most striking later reports appears in a Ministry of Defence UFO file from 1997. The entry is brief, almost frustratingly so, but the image it leaves behind is difficult to shake. On 15th of February 1997, at around 11 o'clock at night, something was reported at Westbury, not far from Warminster. The file states that an object was believed to have landed on top of the Westbury White Horse beauty spot. There is no long witness statement. In the summary, no description of who saw it, no explanation of what happened afterwards. Only that single strange line: an object believed to have landed on top of the White Horse. The Westbury White Horse stands below Bratton Camp on the edge of Salisbury Plain. From a distance, it appears almost simple: a pale horse on green downland, bright against the slope, visible for miles across the countryside. But the land around it is older and stranger than the figure first suggests. Above the horse are the earthworks of Bratton Camp, an Iron Age hill fort built more than 2,000 years ago. English Heritage describes the site as once protecting a settlement of round houses, granaries, stores and workshops. Long before the chalk horse became the symbol of the hill, people had already chosen that high place for defence, watching the land below from the exposed edge of the plain. The horse itself has its own tangled history. The present figure was cut into the hillside in 1778, though older versions of a white horse may have stood there before it. One tradition links it to King Alfred and the Battle of Ethandune, saying that the first horse was cut to commemorate victory over the Danes. Another local legend claims that Alfred had the designer beheaded because the horse appeared to be riding away from the town rather than towards it. There is another local story, quieter but stranger. It's said that when the clock at nearby Bratton Church strikes midnight, the white horse leaves the hillside and goes down to the springs below to drink. In daylight, the horse is fixed and monumental, a landmark cut into chalk and concrete. But in the old story, it's not entirely still. At night, when the village clock sounds, it moves. Even Stonehenge has its own stories. In a more recent Weird Wiltshire piece, a Stonehenge guide passed on a lockdown-era story from security guards who'd reportedly seen and filmed a strange object near the stones. The account sits among other reports of odd lights, apparitions, and uncanny encounters around the monument. Stonehenge is not Warminster, but it shares the same county, the same open sky, and the same sense that ancient places continue to attract modern strangeness. At Clay Hill, the devil drops earth from his sack. At Warminster, Invisible's fans pass over rooftops on Christmas morning. At Westbury, the White Horse is said to walk down and drink at midnight. And more than 30 years after the Warminster wave began, an official UFO file records something believed to have landed on the hill. In Wiltshire, the old stories and the new ones do not replace each other. They gather on the same ancient ground.
Adventures don't always go as planned. One minute you're cruising in your RV, the next your tire hits a massive pothole. Progressive is ready for you when the unexpected hits, with excellent claim service for your boat, RV, and motorcycle. Plus, optional coverage like roadside assistance and on-the-water towing. Visit Progressive.com and make sure your next adventure is unforgettable, for the right reasons. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Coverage is subject to policy terms and limits.
Do you keep hearing podcast ads, like this one, for example, but always wonder how you actually get involved with them for your own brand or organization? Well, it's easier than you think. We're Acast, and we give you the platform to do it all yourself. Browse thousands of popular podcasts, choose the shows that match your perfect audience, set your budget, and launch. And if you want a hand, our podcast specialists are there to help you launch with confidence. This is podcast advertising without barriers. Get started at acast.com/advertise.
It's a bit more of the world's. Something is hiding. That's what this makes me feel like. Under these ancient monuments, there could be creatures, alien ships hiding under the hills. Are you with me? They could be, couldn't they? I'm sure they've done some penetrating ground radar or something. And maybe they're deeper. I don't know. But something is happening out there, and it always has been, as far as I'm concerned. Well, that's it for me today. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you again on Thursday for the Reddit and listener story episode. Take care, everyone.
Adventures don't always go as planned. One minute you're cruising in your RV, the next your tire hits a massive pothole. Progressive is ready for you when the unexpected hits, with excellent claim service for your boat, RV, and motorcycle. Plus, optional coverage like roadside assistance and on-the-water towing. Visit Progressive.com and make sure your next adventure is unforgettable, for the right reasons. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Coverage is subject to policy terms and limits.
Here's a tip for you. There's a podcast out there with fans waiting to be your next customer. They tune in every week, they trust the host, and that host wants to talk about brands like yours in their own words to their audience. The problem is, you just haven't been introduced yet. We're Acast, where that introduction happens. As the world's largest podcast marketplace, we let you browse shows, see who's listening, and book host-read sponsorships or run your own ads, all from one platform. Transparent pricing, real-time data, complete control. Start advertising on podcasts by visiting acast.com/advertise.
The stories told on the Whispering Woods are inspired by historical records, witness reports, and local folklore. While every effort is made to research and represent events accurately, some details, names, and locations may differ from official accounts or have been changed out of respect for those involved. These episodes are created for storytelling and entertainment purposes and should not be considered definitive fact or investigative journalism.